I'm going to reference the standards of Common Core as Common Core, and not the recently rolled out Oklahoma state standards. From this point on, there's no evidence to suggest that there's any difference between the two. The name's been changed in Oklahoma, but we still operate under Common Core state standards. In fact, the State Department of Education website continues to refer questions about Oklahoma state standards to the Common Core website. Representatives, you're the only people in our state who can change the course of education. Not a name change, but the course of education. For the better by taking steps to discontinue the Common Core state standards and adopt a better research assessed framework for education. The first thing I want to do is to do a brief timeline of how we got to where we are. In 2009, the stimulus bill, Race to the Top, was introduced. In 2010, the first Race to the Top deadline to adopt the Common Core standards was in January. In order for schools, for our state to be eligible for Race to the Top, we had to accept a set of national standards. So in 2010, Oklahoma adopted those standards in session. The standards had not been put out yet to be reviewed. After that, the second deadline for the Race to the Top for Common Core was in June. And then the Corps actually released their standards in July. So that was the first time that we were able to see what was coming in 2015, which at that time it seemed like a long way away, so there wasn't a lot of activity on the Common Core standards. We're still running under pass. In 2010, the majority of the states adopted Common Core state standards by July. And in 2011, when it was apparent that there would be a lot of states that did not receive the Race to the Top money, Common Core state standards became a requirement to receive the waiver for No Child Left Behind, which in itself was the biggest mistake educationally that we had. There was absolutely no way that by 2014 every child was going to be on level. So the federal government had to provide a way for us to get out of that, and that was through a waiver. And then we have the Common Core standards that are placed with it. So in that amount of time, we adopted within a year a set of standards that we'd never seen, that were not researched, and now we're on go. Now, all the while still working under pass skills. In 2009, Oklahoma schools were approached by the State Department of Education and then Superintendent Garrett to vote for a resolution in support of Race to the Top funding. As a condition of receiving Race to the Top grants, the adoption of Common Core had to be done. Many schools did not vote for this resolution. Despite this, in a final push to receive the grant, the Oklahoma legislators voted to adopt Common Core state standards before they were published. Oklahoma did not receive this grant. Due to the burdensome criteria accompanying the resolution, my school, like many others in Oklahoma, did not vote this resolution in for Race to the Top. We were concerned with adopting standards that had not been released and were not available for review before implementation. In July of 2010, most states had adopted Common Core to receive the Race to the Top funding, and No Child Left Behind was put into place for the states that were not on board with Common Core. This brings us to where we are today. I'm going to discuss three specific areas of Common Core implementation. There's so many aspects of this that I had to go ahead and just narrow it down to three. The three that I think are most important, but I did leave one out that's very important, and in conclusion I will address that with special needs children. The first issue is developmental issues pre-K through 3. And please forgive me if I repeat anything that you've heard today. I understand that you've been hearing a lot of testimony and a lot of good testimony. Research by the Early Childhood Health and Education Professionals states, we have great concerns about the core standards for young children. The proposed standards conflict with compelling new research in cognitive science, neuroscience, child development, and early childhood education about how young children learn, what they need to learn, and how best to teach them in kindergarten and in the early grades. This type of questioning on the early standards disregards existing knowledge about childhood brain development in the executive function. So I'm talking about children that are coming to our schools in pre-K through 3. What they're being asked to do is not developmentally appropriate for where their brain development is. My background, it comes from Oklahoma Parents as Teachers, where I researched brain development for birth to 3 and helped parents get their children school ready. And the quote that I remember most from developing the child from Harvard University is, children's executive function skills provide the link between early childhood achievement, social and emotional and moral development, and that's from building the brain's air traffic control system. Children at this age are developing connections in their brains, and they have been since birth. Tasks presented by the Common Core state standards are developmentally inappropriate for the various stages of brain growth at each level. With the implementation of such structured curriculum, a huge developmental aspect is neglected: social play. It is a major component of a child's executive brain function. Our experience in the early grades is that increased testing and omitting a key element like social play is a stressful learning environment and creates a negative school climate for young children. The second aspect that I'm going to talk to you about is the assessment portion of the Common Core. In the school year 2012-13, Bennington Public Schools became very, and that's where I'm the superintendent, Bennington Public Schools, we became very proactive in implementing Common Core state standards. We went to the National Model Schools Conference. Our schools spent the money to send half our staff to Florida to learn how to implement Common Core. Because believe me, we're not getting a lot of help from our own state leadership. Our staff went to the Model School Conference. We have 2 teachers that receive a stipend, one at the high school level, one at the elementary level, to be a liaison with the Reach 3 coach from the State Department of Education. As a school, I have to pay a person to be able to take the information that's coming from the State Department, assimilate it, and put it out to my people. And what has happened is, my people know more than those Reach 3 coaches do. We also purchased a software program that connected the past skills objectives with the new Common Core objectives. We were so ready to implement these new fantastic standards that we were going to call Tuesdays Transition Tuesdays, where we would take the Common Core standards district-wide and we would teach them. What we quickly learned is that you cannot be held under past skills objectives and teach to anything else during the year, because your doors will be closed or your teacher's evaluations are held to those tests in the spring. So we had to forget the effort. Not only was it a matter of time and money, but once we got into the exact standards, we realized that the standards were not appropriate for pre-K through 3. Are all the standards bad? Absolutely not. But we deserve the whole package in Oklahoma. We don't just deserve a few standards that are good, maybe some assessment because we pulled out a part, and maybe some staff development because there's a webinar. We deserve the whole package when we're talking about standards. Reform doesn't happen in 1 year. Reform happens over time with diligent staff development, with pilot years, and those are the things that we are not getting in schools with Common Core. Our intent was to use the Tuesdays for that. I instructed our district at that time to not tend to Common Core. I can't do that to my teachers. I cannot expect my teachers to start implementing a system they're not being tested over. So we kept with pass. My third conflict that I have, one other thing that needs to happen, and I spoke this just a little bit, there has to be pilot years. It's impossible to throw all children into new standards and tell educators to sink or swim, especially when their evaluations are tied to these tests. Effective report comes through time and adjustment. Professional development is key to effective reform. CSS professional development has been sporadic and confusing for the schools of Oklahoma. Each school is fighting to develop their own idea of what is being expected of us. If you got a room of superintendents together, and once in a while we get together, especially if there's food, and you looked at us and you asked each one of us, what are you doing to implement Common Core? And there's 20 people in a room, you will get 20 different answers. Now, you say, well, that's what Common Core is supposed to do. You're supposed to have the standards and do what you want. No. There's no way that any of us will know what's on to teach children to pass a test, to keep a door open, to teach her to keep a job. The theme of Common Core is college readiness. If we're truly to get students ready for college, we should be using standards that mirror college entrance exams. We administer 7 tests right now at the high school level. Not one of those tests means anything to a student or to a college. A positive alternative to Common Core is the Aspire standards of the ACT for 3 through 12. If we could teach the ACT standards, remediation rates will go down and the scores will go up. Scores are not going to go up with the implementation of PASS, not because education is lacking, but because the implementation of Common Core has been too fast, too expensive, and too random. That reflects leadership. This has been a top-down approach from the onset, as seen in the timeline at the beginning of the presentation. Portions of the Common Core have been found to be significantly lower in quality than in quality standards in states like Massachusetts. Our leaders are making a conscious choice to stand with Common Core in Oklahoma. It's time to ask why. If countless experts in child development, national education leaders, university experts, and educators, parents, and children are telling you that Common Core is not good for students, why are we continuing to rush into its implementation without proper review, evaluation, or preparation? In conclusion, I'd like to reference the movie, The Perfect Storm. If you've seen that movie, you know that there were a lot of elements that came together to develop one massive storm. Over the next year and a half, you are going to see in Oklahoma, and I say you're going to see because you guys are the ones that are going to be starting to hear about it if you haven't already. All of these elements coming together. You've taken away a modified assessment for a special needs child. They cannot be successful if it's not on their level. We have children that are crying at school because it's not developmentally correct for what they're doing. There is another way. It would require a waiver to be rewritten. But over the next 16 months, I want you to remember that movie, The Perfect Storm, because before you know it, after the testing of next session, and while we're waiting in 16 for the 15 scores to come in, or 15-15, which who knows, we are going to have a gigantic storm erupt over Common Core standards, over children, over what's right educationally. Thank you so much for your time. If you'd like a copy of what I have, you're more than welcome to have it. There's the research that I have.
We would definitely like a copy. Give it to Representative Kern, and then we'll let it here so we can get it out. We'll put all this out there. And you do understand the waiver was not written in Oklahoma by Oklahomans. That was gone out of state by the State Department of Education to have someone else write the waiver for Oklahoma. That seems a little oxymoronic.
State
Representative Kern.
Well, may we ask her a question?
Sure, sorry.
You've reached your limit. Yeah, we're giving the resident candidates. We're giving the resident candidates total too. So go ahead, Representative Kern.
Well, thank you very much. My question to you is, what would you like to see done?
I would like to see us go to the ACT is developing an Aspire program. The ACT is 50 years of research, 50 years of testing. It's not haphazardly put together. They are modeling their assessment around the Common Core questioning. Now, is that good or bad? I don't know. All I know is that as we have it right now, we have some standards. We don't have any assessment. We don't have any staff development. We don't have a direction. So I would like to see us look at the ACT Aspire for 3 through 12. And then pre-K through 3, I'd like to see us go to a growth model that is done in-house in Oklahoma, for Oklahoma.
May I follow up? You know, if we could do what I wanted to do, I would get rid of Common Core. I've never voted to implement Common Core. But some say that we can't just do away with it here in Oklahoma, that we have to do this incrementally. So is it your opinion that it needs to be done that way, or just?
I think right now what we need to do before we go any further is stop. We need to stay with the past skills objectives that we have. They're not perfect, and they do need more rigor. I will never say they don't. They are needed to be rewritten. As you move along, you should change and grow. But we have got to stop the snowball that's going to happen. One of my biggest concerns is with special needs kids. When they don't have the modified assessment test, and the answer that you get is, well, they deserve to be to have the same information as someone else. Well, obviously, who said that doesn't know what a modified test is. It's the same information. It's maybe bigger print. It may be three choices instead of 4. But it's definitely, in my opinion, violating their rights for special needs.
One last question. You alluded to this yourself about the ACT Aspire is being rewritten to conform to Common Core. So I would be in favor of the ACT being used more, but not being rewritten to align with Common Core.
And what I say to that is, in a perfect world, we could have every single thing that we want. But if I am going to tell a high school child, you have got to get into college with this score on the ACT, I want to be able to teach that child what's on that ACT so that they don't have remediation classes and so that they don't have to spin their wheels for a year. And if that's what the ACT is doing to be able to gain the waiver, then, you know, I would have to say that's a much better system than the one we're heading into.
Okay, thank you. We have a question from the audience.
So, Ms. Anderson, let me make sure I'm clarifying this for me. The past skills, that's what we had before Common Core.
Correct.
So, should or should we not vote out Common
I do believe we should vote out Common
Core
Core.
and go back to our past standards?
If we go back to the past standards, that's an option.
Until we work on something.
And we could redo the past skills. I mean, there's many options. And what I think has happened is that we've always been told there's one option. We're going to go Common Core. But that's not, and you know, even in coming back and saying to schools, okay, you can do Common Core, or you could go with the past skills that have been rewritten, or you could go with the ACT. At least it gives schools the opportunity to choose what might be best for their community. Instead of just saying Common Core is what everybody in the United States needs. I don't believe that for 1 second. But, you know, and I know the concern about the ACT. I think what the ACT has done is looked at what they could do to make themselves be able to attain a waiver for the federal government. So once again, if that is going to be our exit exam for kids, I want to be able to use that assessment.
Ms. Anderson, I'm also hearing you say you believe in local control.
I do.
And community.
Absolutely.
To have the right to decide what their young people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would like to see.
We can have one more quick question, Crystal.
Okay, I have a 3rd grader, and with the RSA, the reading proficiency, his teacher is currently teaching PASS.
Yes.
Now, are they being tested on Common Core in the spring, or are they not?
This year they're being tested on PASS, but what we're told is that there's some Common Core mixed in there.
Yeah, because I have one teacher in his there's 4 3rd grade teachers, 2 are teaching Common Core, 2 are teaching PASS.
Right.
Well, how do you think those 3rd graders are going to do on the test in the spring?
What I say about this is there's absolutely nothing common about Common Core in Oklahoma.
So,
There's nothing. And I've got a question for a 2nd grader over there that I usually read, which is outrageous. It's from Saxton Math, and it is absolutely outrageous how many math steps they're asking a 2nd grader to do in a Common Core question. So
Send that to us, would you?
I've got copies.
Okay, thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
With this, we're going to go to